Greetings once again. In the last video, which I normally use for my course in orality, Glst 655, I gave you the big picture of Lucky's story and then how I shared the gospel differently, having understood his worldview, his values, his religious beliefs, his culture better. It changed the way I communicated. Didn't change the gospel. Gospel message was the same, but the way I shared it, the words that I used after I came to understand his worldview, bridged a gap that nothing else did before that. And this week I just wanted to share with you another story of another person who I encountered in Cambodia. And we had lived near this person for quite some time, saw them almost all on a daily basis in our community. And just one day my husband was talking to the dad of the family and said, "How's your family?" And turns out they were hurting so much that he actually shared, which is not very common. You don't share all your family issues with people. You want to keep honoring the family and cover those. And he shared that his daughter was not doing well, and she was young. She was in her 20s. And my husband said, "Well, let's let her have a conversation with my wife." And so we did. And I just asked her, "Tell me about your life. Tell me what's been going on in your life." And we were doing all this in the Khmer language. And as I heard her talk about her journey, she talked about hearing voices one day, just suddenly hearing voices. And it was a very stressful time in her life. And how her family dealt with that. They had gone to a shaman, a witch doctor, to try to help. They had gone to the Wat, which is the temple, the Buddhist temple, for the monks to help her. She had stayed there. She had lived there. They had changed her name so that the spirits could not follow her. They had to pay money to change her name to do that. And just the things that they did just to see her become well were phenomenal. They were costly. And really, about that time, we were getting ready to move in return for furlough to the States and possibly to retire. So I had very little time to spend with her, and I knew that her situation was grave. The more that I talked with her, the more I understood that she probably had schizophrenia. And I knew no word for that in the Khmer language. I just talked about the disease. I described it and how it could manifest. And lots of people have that problem. But in that culture and in that instance, what could also be involved could be possession by a spirit. Especially since she'd never been a believer and she was in that atmosphere and all that had happened to her. And I just explained to her, and the dad was there at the time, and I said, "I'm sorry." And normally I would not be so blunt. That culture is not a very direct culture. I would not be so direct in that culture. I would be more indirect. That's a more indirect culture. But knowing that I had very little time and I just had to get to the point, and they were very honest with me, I just said, "You have no other hope but Jesus. Jesus is the only one who has authority over the spirit world. You are dominated. You may be dominated by the spirit world. It may be an issue, a physical issue that needs medication, but if it's a spiritual issue, that needs Jesus." And I just explained the gospel from that point on, and how Jesus has authority over the spirit world, and how he's the creator of the universe, and he came in the flesh, and he had authority over the spirit world. And that's the way I shared the gospel with her from her situation. And you don't call for a decision right then, right there. In most Asian cultures, I let her think about it. I would see her periodically. I didn't have to worry about this being the last time I would see her. If it was the last time I was going to see her, I would probably press for something like that. But I got a text a few moments later, in this land of social media, texting, Facebook, whatever, a friend request on Facebook, a text and a message that her dad wants her to be a Christian. And I was like, well, it doesn't exactly work that way. And there's a lot you don't know that you need to learn. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to be a Christian. So we began taking her to church, helping her to understand what it meant to submit her life to Jesus. Was she going to do that? What all that meant. And I had to put her in the care of the local church and entrust them to take care of her and for her to continue to go back, which was hard. I felt like I was abandoning her. But the whole process of walking someone in the few weeks that I had left, the few days that I had left, of what is Christianity to someone who knew absolutely nothing about the gospel, absolutely, such as their questions were, we were going to take them to church and introduce them to the church and have them pray for her in the context of the church because I wanted to leave her with believers. They said, how much would that cost? I'm like, nothing. It will cost you nothing. Jesus died for this. He died for you. It will cost nothing. So all the things that they did not know, they wanted a quick fix. They were not going to get a quick fix. Yes, Jesus is the healer. He's the only one that has authority over the spirit world. And she needed her whole life renovated and salvation. To this day, I don't know whether she has completely done that or not. I pray for her. She can go back to church. I'm friends with her on Facebook. I love her. I communicate with her, but I cannot make her become a believer. And that is a whole other realm of intercultural communication and engagement, keeping the conversation open for where she may one day decide that she will follow Jesus with her whole heart, but the opportunities are there for her to be involved in the church, to have that relationship with Jesus and with the community of believers. And so I want to leave you with that example of intercultural communication and sharing the gospel, and how gut-wrenching it can be at times when you want to see someone delivered, you want to see someone saved, you want to see their life changed. And intercultural communication also involves great depth of feeling and emotion and empathy and caring. And that's not in the books sometimes, folks. It will tear at your very heart and drive you to your knees.